Great rising to everybody. How are we today? This is Robert Phoenix, and welcome to the Astro Weather. Let me put the Astro Weather graphic in the old slot there, and there we go. So we're revved up, ready to go. Hope everybody's having a fine morning or evening wherever you are. Looks like what's going on in chat? What's happening with Julie? Seen some Julie news. Let's see. Let's back it up here. Mm-mm-mm. Wow. Okay. Uh, Julie's husband made it to another day. Watch him slowly die. All he does is sleep. Oh boy, that is really the hardest place to be. I mean, it is. That is. And I know many of you have had experience with people passing, and myself just recently. And I would just pray that my mother would just go to bed one night and then not wake up. I mean, that was really the ideal passing for in my mind. Um, but that long kind of, and what's weird is that, like, it doesn't always seem like it's long. Well, it could be a week or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but those weeks are agonizing, and they seem like they go on forever. And that there's just, to quote Sartre, there's no exit, right? There's no exit. And it's really, really difficult. And, I mean, the theological part of me says, well, the person still has things to burn, right? I mean, that to me is probably the most reasonable rationalization as to why people are prolonging their suffering, besides the fact that the medical industry can keep them alive and use drugs and all these other things to keep their levels up. If they stop that, they actually go much faster, but they're in a great deal of more suffering and pain. So it's a real weird catch-22. But it feels to me like the agony is, and the time is equivalent to the burn. And if you have a lot to burn, what I mean by burn is that you have a lot of unfinished chapters, unresolved pieces, and it's almost like you're in this time compression window where you have to somehow process what I would call the unused portions of your life. That's what it feels like to me. And again, I'm no theological expert. And the people who pass like gently in the night, or they probably don't have a lot to burn. And this is outside of things like violent deaths or being a victim of a car accident or something like that. This is different. Like, your body is breaking down, and they're propping you up and pumping you up on these drugs. And it just feels like the people that pass away in their sleep just don't have a lot of burn, and they just transition very easily. And one of the most in some ways pain-free and economical experiences for the loved one. Now, the loved one may not be able to say whatever they want to say, or in some cases, when you're with somebody and they're just on their way out, there's not much you can say. And I was just there. there is a pulse of a feeling, but there isn't kind of a great response to articulation. So I don't know. I'm sorry, Julie, you have to go through that. And it's one of the harder experiences of being here on this planet is the end game. And I know you've had a really challenging life to go along with that. So, we send you as much recognition of God's love within you and um, know that you are loved. You are loved, and your husband is loved. And I guess if we can all sit with that, we might make this world a bit of a better place. But the challenge, I'm going off script a little bit here, and I love the Christian ethos. I was reading a letter by Pontius Pilate the other night. Actually, it was a YouTube video where the guy was reading the letter. I didn't really like his voice, but I wasn't really there for the voice. I was there for the content. Although his accent made it hard for me to understand him, but I did. I listened very closely, and maybe that was part of the point. But the way that Pilate, this is a letter from Pilate to Caesar, and the way that Pilate described Jesus was uh, very interesting and powerful, and quite profound. And he said he was the most feared man I'd ever met, that I would tremble in his presence, not because of his uh, terrible will or choleric temperament or whatever, but because of his peacefulness, his serenity, and his freedom of being. That is what terrified Pilate. That this was a man, this was a teacher of teachers. And it wasn't just concept and theory, but he could feel the emanation coming off of him. Very interesting letter, fascinating letter. Um, anyway, Julie, we we all uh, share your pain because we've all experienced it at one level or another. So we hope that he transitions gracefully and peacefully, and that you have closure with him, whatever that is. Okay. Why don't we get on to the weather? How about that earthquake in Taiwan, 7.5? Wow. Some of the buildings are now standing at an angle. So are we in the eclipse? Are we in the eclipse field? On Saturday we did a webinar, and I did go over a list of earthquakes and as they relate to eclipses. Where is that PDF? Where is that PDF? Let me just bust this out a little bit here, just for your edification. Give you an example, an idea of the power of the earthquake in relationship to the eclipse or eclipses in general. Let me see if I can find that graphic. Hold on. Well, I thought I had it. Let's see. Oh, here it is, right here. Okay, let me just bring this up. Hold on. I'm going to be able to put the PDF up here. I don't know. Let's see. I have a weird share system here. Let's see. Yeah, I guess so. Cool. Cool, man. We can do it, I think. All right. So let's look at the eclipse path here in earthquakes. So here we go. And then we'll jump into the weather. There it is. All right, look at that. Okay, so this is a graphic that I put together. This is the New Madrid fault line, the seismic zone. Here's the eclipse path right here. So sort of it actually has more of a bend this way. It's more of a bend this way. So it gets closer. I couldn't really make that bend in the graphic, but this is basically the eclipse path. Okay. So here are some. Oh, look at this. On September 20th, 1999, Taiwan suffered an earthquake measuring 7.6 Richter, causing 2,400 casualties. This is not within the target area, but the quake occurs a mere week or one lunar quarter before the key date, 2 lunar quarters after hitting Athens. Notice how the outer planet Pluto is located on the upper meridian. So that's interesting. Like Taiwan has a history of a quake outside of the eclipse path, the eclipse zone. Wow. So here we go. On August 7th, 1999, Izmit of Turkey is hit by an earthquake measuring 7.6 on the Richter scale, causing over 17,000 casualties. This was eyebrow raising because the earthquake occurs only 6 days after the eclipse of the sun, and in a global sense, it is not far outside the watch area. The quake occurs 6 lunar quarters prior to the estimated key date of September 28th. Then on September 7th, 1999, Athens, Greece is rocked by a quake of 6.0 Richter, virtually the same region at the earthquake of Izmit, becoming closer to Italy and the Etna area. The earthquake of Athens occurred 21 days or 3 lunar quarters before the estimated key date, 3 lunar quarters after the Izmit quake. It was located on the chronological midpoint of August 17th and September 28th. And that's the one right there. September 20th, 1999, Taiwan suffered a tremendous earthquake. And that was a week before, in 1 lunar quarter before the key date. We're kind of there. I got to say, that's fucking interesting. I got to put that on Twitter. Wow. Okay. There we go. Let's get into the weather. So we're lining up now. This is pretty much what we're going to be looking at as the eclipse begins to move into phase. The moon will eventually hit this balsamic phase right here just before the eclipse. I think that's a critical time. You know, it's going to be a very, very critical time. It's going to cross the path theoretically of Mars, Saturn, Venus, and Neptune. And you know, when I think of Pisces, I think of like mass hysteria. Pisces is one of those signs that just feels like mass hysteria, you know, like the collective imagination is captured. And the moon is quite emotional in Pisces. And again, very imaginative, thinking that things are there that may not be there, or things that are there and stagger the imagination. So we're in a really weird time. Okay, so let's look around a little bit. They're going to cull about 2 million chickens here in Texas because they think that there's this avian bird flu, which jumps from chicken to cow to person. The zoonotic effect of um, these flus or viruses from one animal to another really cannot occur unless they're not telling us the truth about what these things really are. If they vaccinated a shit ton of chickens, uh, then they're going to exhibit probably some flu-like symptoms. And again, the quality control of what goes into not only human food, but livestock and pet food, you know, we think we know, but we really don't. We really don't. So would it be unimaginable that the feed or whatever's in the water supply of this main chicken plant, processing plant, two of them, one in Michigan and one in Texas, it could have been compromised? I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's out of the question. It's like, once people started to get vaccinated, all of a sudden your COVID numbers started to go up. Well, gee, I wonder why. Anyway, so there's that floating in the background. Now we have we'll talk more about this on 15 minutes. Now we have the Chinese Navy moving in towards Taiwan. Are they there to help them? Or are they there to move in on a critical phase in a vulnerable phase for the Taiwanese? Again, when we look at the moon and it starts to move into Pisces, we are looking at things, especially conjuncting Mars, like naval warfare. And I just keep looking at this Mars Saturn conjunction, which is getting closer and closer for the eclipse. And I don't like this conjunction. Again, the redeeming component of a Mars Saturn conjunction is that you take your own spiritual and religious um, faith, or your own spiritual and religious practice unto your own wings. Like it would, to me, it's the sovereign expression and faith in action. Now, that said, again, I would not be surprised if we see some religious lunatics during this period. I could see, like, weird messianic lunatic stuff, right? And we're not even talking about the red heifer, which happens on the 10th. By the way, we'll be on with Quite Frankly tonight, talking about the poor red cow whose ashes are going to be mixed with water to purify the temple wall or whatever. But here we are. Let's talk about the present. We have Moon Pluto conjunction early today, or wherever you are, and that's a very intense energy. No matter how detached or how observant the moon in Aquarius is, when you connect it up with Pluto, um, there's intense energy, right? And usually the intense energy has to do with kind of the ideological application of social systems, because Aquarius is social systems. And the moon, again, even if it's in sort of detached Aquarius, does the moon is in a weird way kind of an organizing principle, even though it is less defined as the sun. It is an organizing principle. It's ruled by Cancer, and Cancer is the fourth house. And, you've got these organizing principles within your home. Like we eat at a certain time at night, right? We eat at a certain time. We're in bed by a certain time. We get up by a certain time. We don't leave the house without our teeth brushed and our hair brushed. We don't leave the house like slobs, right? These are all kind of organizing principles that relate to the fourth house and sort of the lunar cohesion, the value system of what's being passed on from one generation to another. Although, it seemed to me that that's kind of a tradition going by the wayside. But so there is an organizing principle to them. It's just different. It's based on something different, right? It's based on the cohesion of the family or cohesion of the home. So to me here, now we're into this discussion about, well, who gets to own a home? I did a little segment yesterday on 15 minutes, by the way, link in the show notes. I did a little segment on 15 minutes yesterday about how they want to move older people out of their homes in England. Like Rishi Sunak wants to, say, well, you got one person here and you got 3 bedrooms. That's too much space. We can fit a migrant family of 5 in here, 6 maybe. You're going to have to sell your home. You're going to have to go over to this building over here where you're going to get a studio apartment, maybe a 40 by 40 if you're lucky, and that's where you'll stay the rest of your life. And oh, by the way, we own that. You don't own it. I mean, this is what we're talking about here, right? This is, the kind of force feeding the collective idea that some people are more worthy of homes than others, or some people who have homes are privileged and they need to live like the rest of the world, theoretically, right? So here's your moon Pluto conjunction, and I think that that's going to be a huge talking point today. And the reason why it's a talking point is because we have Mercury in Aries down here retrograde. Now remember, when we go into the eclipse, the only planet that's going to be in square is Mercury with Pluto, and it's retrograde. And it just feels to me like the travel situation is going to be awful, and systems are going to be challenged. Now, look, whether or not this is all a psyop and fear mongering, because we've never experienced anything like this with an eclipse before. Could be, or maybe they know something, and maybe they know something that is related to the eclipse, but not the eclipse. Maybe there's an X factor. Oh, did we say X factor? Maybe there's an X factor that we're not aware of, and somebody's aware of it. And so there's a trickle down of this information in all these places in a state of emergency. I personally, if you're going to travel during that time, you should be there now, right? And if you're going to be there, you should be prepared to be there after the eclipse, meaning that you could stay 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days, right? I'm just being straight up here. Just be prepared, because this Mercury retrograde and squaring Pluto, the only what we would call malefic on that day. And when there's a bunch of malefics, it's like a fight for your attention. Oh, well, there's this and there's this and there's this. And sometimes they can diffuse each other. But when there's one, right, it stands out. Like if this was a person's chart, this Mercury retrograde Pluto square, because there's nothing else going on to compete with the tension in the chart, it would stand out. And no matter how theoretically good the rest of the chart could be, uh, that one aspect could destroy everything. So that's what we're looking at here. Venus is creeping up on Neptune, and I suppose you'll read about, if you're somebody who follows astrologers and horoscopes, you'll read, oh, this is a wonderful day to let go and forgive. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day to, and that's true. I mean, let's take our dear friend Julie. Venus Neptune conjunction. We don't want to trivialize something like that when you're in a situation like that, especially because Neptune rules the 12th house, and 12th house is hospitals. It's usually where people go to transition. Not always, but usually. Right. So, Julie, the Venus Neptune conjunction, speak right to you. So there is some truth to that. There's some validity to that. And I guess there are people that walk around with some wounds emotionally. When I look inside myself, I look back at all the relationships that I've had, and I'd say, I'm pretty good, but I'm not perfect, right? There are still probably a few dark spots on my sun that I should probably at some point address. Although it feels like the other person should be addressing them more than, or people, one person than me. Just saying. But it is one of those days where I guess you could like forgive. It's forgive, surrender, forgive. It's a textbook definition, but not a bad one. Not a bad one. I think the other thing too is when we look at Venus, it represents our relationship to the thing. So it's our relationship to Neptune, right? It's our relationship to what we would call the divine, our relationship to what we would call the prime creator, right? Our relationship to the most high and the galactic force that binds all things together and has a completely omniscient and yet personal role in each of our lives, which I have experienced, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So Venus is our relationship to that thing. And over the course of the next 24 hours, you're going to see people. Look, I'm watching things through Twitter. I scroll through Twitter all the time, probably too much. And I'm watching people start to take this relationship with God quite seriously. And I think these people are like canaries in a coal mine. Like, oh, look at this. This person is figuring out that there is some major chaos headed in our direction. And when that chaos arrives, and it's already here, you need some spiritual armor. The Mars Saturn conjunction can be some spiritual armor as well, right? The one thing that I look at with that Mars Saturn conjunction is that, again, it's I think it can be very fascistic, and using the power of fear. I mean, I think there's a lot of fear in Pisces. There's a lot of fear, and because it's dualistic, it's also a sign that can be quite fearless, provided the individual is decked out with some spiritual armor. But yeah, I mean, the quote unquote powers that be could use a lot of fear and say, okay, well, we got to shut this thing down, limit, when you have Saturn on top of Mars, you're limiting Mars, you're limiting expression. And Mars is also movement. With Mars, you move your body. Mercury isn't the only planet that's connected to movement. Mars is connected to movement as well. So here we go. We're getting ready to uh hit the chute. When I was a kid, we're so different when we're young. When I was a kid, I was in Tahoe with my parents, and I'd done some skiing before, like in Squaw Valley, and that wasn't bad. I kind of took to it, and it was really fun. And I wish I would have continued to ski because I wasn't bad at it. Once I figured some things out, I was like cruising down the hills and right. And I think, well, and it had been a while. It'd been maybe, I don't know, 2 years since I've been skiing. And my parents were in Tahoe. I went with them. And I said, hey, I want to go skiing. And they said, okay. How about, what is it? Whatever the big fucking uh, ski resort is there in Tahoe, goes way up in the mountain. It's not Squaw. I forget the name. Somebody chat will know. And he'll come to me. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go there. So that's when California was going through a bit of a drought. So they only had the top of the mountain available for skiing, and that was like black diamond runs. And so I get up on the gondola and I get way the fuck on top of this mountain, right? And I look down and it was nothing like what I was, skiing on the bunny run in Squaw Valley. And not only that, but it was steep and it had moguls. And I didn't know how to ski these things. So what do? Right? You just, okay, I'm gonna try to, figure it out. And that's what I did the whole day, right? I just went going down and trying to traverse and figure this shit out, right? But I gotta tell you, it was kind of fearful, right? But that's the thing about youth. I mean, there's this plasticity with youth and this sense that, okay, I can do this. As we get older, we lose a lot of that. We lose a lot of the plasticity, a lot of the flexibility, and it's like, oh, geez, can I do this? Right. Um, and then the reason I'm telling you the story, because it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like we're at the top of the mountain and we're staring down at the bottom of the mountain. And it's terrain that we've never covered before. And there are all these moguls. And it's like, well, how do I get to the bottom of this thing? And I think you just sit with it for a while and know that somehow you're going to get to the bottom of the hill. You're gonna, and I did, and it wasn't like, well, I did that. No, I went back like 3 or 4 times because I wanted to get better at it, so that by the time I was done, I was like, yeah, okay, I did that, and it worked. It worked. But when I got to the top, it was kind of a holy shit moment. What do I do now? Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because with the right attitude, the right attitude and the right intention, many things can be overcome. All right. Please don't forget to hit the like, the thumbs up button, subscribe. So you can be here every day, get notified. And let's see that. Oh, that's our star of the day. Look at that. Put the banner up there. Right there. Ladies and gentlemen, your True Hemp Science star of the day is Doris Day. It's Doris Day. Yes, indeed, Doris Day. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about True Hemp Science. It is your one-stop shop for all things CBD, organically sourced and consciously procured. The thing that you'll find out about Chris's CBD is that it's extremely high quality, and he's like an alchemist. I don't think there's anybody else out there quite like him doing what he's doing. And you may pay a little more for the CBD, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. You're not going to get any cheap shit CBD you're going to put in your body. And if you want to get a little goodie bag, tomorrow I'll bring the prop for the goodie bag. Bring a couple props for the goodie bag. If you want to get a little goodie bag, all you do is type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you spend $100 more and you get the goodie bag. $150 more, get you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can make an appointment with Chris just by going to triumscience.com and want to find out more about it. It's right at the top. Click on that, and you can make an appointment, and he can talk you through the entire process. So there you go. Doris Day. What an interesting chart, and what a strange life. Where do we start? Let's start off with Saturn. So, Doris Day's issues with men, Chiron, Sun, South Node. She had issues with men all of her life. The only guy that she really didn't have an issue with was her son, Terry Melcher, who was one of the most prolific producers in the LA music scene and had owned the house that Charlie Manson, the Manson family, went to, because Melcher wouldn't produce his songs and he wasn't there. He and his girlfriend weren't there, but you know the rest of the story about that. But so Doris Day's life changes when she comes home from school one day and finds her father in bed banging her best friend's mother. It's like she's in high school. So here we go. Saturn, Pluto square. Saturn's the father, right? There's that Pluto square. There's that Sun, Pluto square. Sun, Saturn opposition. Father when you're young, father when you're teen, opposing one another, squaring Pluto. It's intense. They get a divorce. So that means that Doris Day has to grow up very quickly. And she does. She starts to sing with big bands. And that's where she gets her break. And she has quite a good voice. Now, when you look at Doris Day's chart, she is talented. She's incredibly talented. She has Sun in Aries, trine Mars in Sag, trine Neptune in Leo, right? Trine the Sun. That's a grand trine with a kite pattern. And over here, we have the true node in Libra and conjunct Jupiter, right? This is a major kite. And anytime you get a fire trine, grand fire trine, the individual has a lot of life force. And, you know, nobody would ever accuse Doris Day of being cheated out of life force. She was always quite vibrant in her expression. And, you know, but her relationship with men is just weird throughout her entire life. Like, you know, one of the famous leading men that she did a number of films with is Rock fucking Hudson. Right. So basically, you know, she's having this cinematic relationship with a wounded male. Rock Hudson was a wounded male. He was, wounded in the sense that he was queer as a $3 bill, but he couldn't tell anybody. That's a wound. And every man in her life, with the exception of Terry Melcher, is wounded and winds up wounding her, particularly her is it third husband, second husband. Second, I think she got married after it was Harry Melcher. Terry took his last name. He basically was her manager and took all of her money. So Terry Melcher, her son, had to remake Doris Day. And there's Pluto in the 10th house. She goes through these transformations with her career. And eventually he gets her set up with, I believe, a sitcom, the Doris Day show. But besides that, Terry Melcher is influential in the creation of Branson, Missouri. And that's where Doris Day winds up remaking a lot of her money. She becomes a fixture in Branson. Of course, Branson becomes a little Nashville. A little mind control center going on in Branson too, but that's another story. But Doris Day had nothing but trouble with men in her life. Now, the moon plays an incredibly prominent role here. Incredibly prominent because she's a woman, right? She's a woman, and people that have moon on the midheaven can be quite famous, but they can also be dragged through scandal. And Doris Day had a few scandals, some of which were more public than others. And she has the moon in Gemini, which made her quite versatile. She could sing, she could act. She's really she's really talented. Extreme. And she was like, Doris Day was like America's sweetheart. And behind all that, she had all these really fucked up relationship with men. She also had a few salacious affairs, one of which I'll address in a moment. But that's the moon, right? The moon in Gemini, and it's versatile. Sing, act, mom, and then Pluto also in the 10th house, and she would have to go through and recreate her career over time. But the talent, you get this Mars Neptune trine, that's creative. Mars Sun trine, that's that's passionate. Sun Neptune trine, again, creative expression. Neptune in the 11th, she probably hung out with a lot of artists and actors. Like that was her social group. Neptune and Leo, right? Of course, that's her world. That's her social group. What's interesting is that Neptune isn't really afflicted in her chart. Pluto's really afflicted, right? Like, yeah, resources, money. And she's got that Saturn Jupiter conjunction. And the thing here let's pull this over, is that the thing with Virgo rising, like, Doris Day had this image of, kind of being pure as the driven snow. You would get that with Virgo on the ascendant. And then she has all this Libra here, which of course, she's an attractive woman. And that's the mark of Libra in the first house, especially for a woman. So you can see like the persona, like, and whenever you see Doris Day, either on screen or whether she would do an interview, like there was never a hair out of place unless it was part of the script or the movie. Very much Virgo rising. But she does have a yod, and it's with Uranus. And again, this is going to be career stuff, right? This is work. So with Juno here conjuncting Uranus, every now and then she'd have to do something new, right? Reinvent herself, reinvent her work. And I think when we get into the yod with Neptune, and on the other side of the yod, we have Jupiter, I think that could be, again, related to resources. The planet to me that is interesting in her chart is Venus. And It's in Aries. And Venus in Aries is hot, right? Like every woman I've ever known, well, who has Venus in Aries has an innate like sexuality. They have sexual charisma. Venus in Aries, unless they have Saturn around it, which could block that. That's possible. But Venus in Aries taken on its own is hot, right? It's passionate. And people who have Venus in Aries sometimes jump into relationships too quickly. And Doris Day, I think, is one of those people. And she probably didn't use a lot of judgment when she chose somebody because she's an Aries. That said, she's also known for having some affairs. Again, 8th house Venus, right? One of the affairs that she had was with Dodgers shortstop Maury Wills. And, back in the day, Hollywood and even the Dodgers did not look kindly upon Miss Day's affair with Maury Wills. Maury Wills is black. The Dodgers actually wound up trading Maury Wills to the Pittsburgh Pirates to get him out of LA so that for whatever reason, the Doris Day Maury Wills affair, well, we know the reason, wouldn't pop up. And of course, all the gossip writers in Hollywood knew that they were banging each other. Maury Wills, stealing bases and stealing hearts. And so, yeah, he was gone. So Doris Day's got secrets around relationships, right? And what's interesting too is, again, with this moon in Gemini, she could probably bifurcate. Oh, that fucker took my money. Fuck him. I'm going to fuck Maury Wills. Yeah, I'm going to teach that son of a bitch. It's a very complicated chart. Very complicated chart. Mercury in Pisces. So I think that's good for acting, good for singing. You got a Mercury Mars squared. Don't piss Doris Day off. Again, in front of the camera, America's sweetheart. On the other side of the camera, Doris Day, I bet, had a wicked temper. And even with that square to the moon, Mercury moon squares. You say things, especially moon in Gemini. I bet you she could piss some people off. But the talent in the chart is not undeniable. The creative talent in the chart is undeniable. The challenge with men, undeniable, right? Ripped off, starts off with the father, and that facilitates the divorce, and on and on and on. Eventually, she winds up moving to LA, and the rest is history. And Doris Day was a huge, huge star. I can't overstate how big she was, especially during the Cary Grant phase, The Wounded Man. All right, there's your THS star of the day, your Trium Science star of the day, Doris Day. So that brings us to the end of today's programming. We have a link in the chat, and perhaps Tom or one of the mods put that link there for 15 minutes where we will continue the conversation. In the meantime, find your center. Find your center and stay there. We're coming into the eclipse. It's Eclipse Alley. And we're going to come through the other side. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to say what's possible. Have a blessed day. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.